This is the incredible story of how one man's foolishness brought down an entire empire. It was November 9th, 1989, and a massive crowd had gathered in East Berlin. Tens of thousands of people from the west side of the city had come to the border with the hope that something miraculous might happen. You see, the Berlin Wall had stood as a stark reminder of oppression for the past 28 years, ever since it was first constructed in 1961. It divided families, friends, and lovers, and before its demolition, anyone caught trying to cross over into West Berlin without permission would be shot on sight. But now there were rumors that the wall might finally come down. Earlier that day, a press conference was held by Günter Schabowski, a member of the East German Communist Party. They had decided that they could no longer keep up the charade that everything was fine in East Germany. In fact, things were going terribly. The economy wasn't doing well, and people were growing tired of being oppressed, so it was time to make some changes. Schabowski announced to the West German newspaper that starting immediately, citizens of East Germany would be allowed to travel freely across the border. He even went as far as to say that all the border guards had been notified of the change. But wait a second. Did he really mean it? Because when word got out to the masses, people became absolutely ecstatic. They began to gather at the border crossings with the hopes of finally being able to cross over into the West. Now, there was just one tiny problem. No one actually told the border guards about the supposed change in policy. It was a simple oversight, really. You see, Schabowski wasn't supposed to announce anything at all. He was only filling in for the head of the party, who was out sick that day. So obviously, Schabowski didn't know the full details of the situation. He just thought he was making an announcement about some new travel regulations that would go into effect later on down the road. Now, unfortunately, many of the border guards didn't know this either. They also believed that the order had come directly from their superiors. That meant that when people began to show up at the border crossings, they had no idea what to do. Here we can see one of the border guards telling people that they can't cross over because the paperwork just isn't ready yet. But the people weren't having it. They could tell that something had changed. There was a palpable tension in the air, and they wanted to cross over. Now, right then and there, a pregnant woman took matters into her own hands. She demanded that the guards let her through, or she would go on hunger strike until they did. A few other people joined in on her protest, and soon enough, the guards had to make a decision. They could either allow the people to cross over, or they could fire on them. But after 28 years of shooting people, how many more people did they have to shoot? They eventually relented and let the woman and a few others through. From there, the news spread like wildfire. People were crossing over the border without being shot. Surely this meant that the wall was coming down, right? Well, actually, it was quite the opposite. You see, the government had made a terrible mistake. They had opened up the gates without telling the border guards, and now there was nothing they could do to stop the flow of people. We have to remember that back in the late 80s, the Berlin Wall was considered to be absolutely impenetrable. There were guard towers every few feet with armed soldiers inside of them. If you tried to cross over, you'd be met with bullets. But now the gates were open and people were pouring through. As we can see here, hundreds of people are trying to cross over, but the guards don't know what to do. Some of them try to hold people back, while others simply stand there dumbfounded. It was pure chaos. But the party officials were quick to realize what had happened. As soon as they heard that people were crossing over the border without being shot, they realized that their mistake had caused a catastrophe. The people were taking advantage of the situation and flooding into West Berlin. This couldn't continue any longer. They had to close the borders once again. As the night wore on, the party officials met together to discuss what should be done next. They knew that they needed to get the wall back up as fast as possible, but they didn't want to resort to violence. After all, the world was watching. They needed a clever solution to turn people away without causing a riot, and so they came up with the perfect plan. What if they offered the people an incentive not to cross over? They would offer jobs, housing, and higher wages to those who stayed in East Berlin. Surely that would be good enough, right? Well, at first it seemed like their plan was working. Many of the people who had gathered at the border decided to stay in East Berlin when they heard the offer, but it didn't last for long. The next morning, word spread throughout all of East Germany that you could move freely to the west. Soon enough, millions of people were heading towards the border. They had waited for this moment for decades, and they weren't going to be denied. When the party officials saw what was happening, they knew that they were in trouble. They had lost control of the situation, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. They tried closing the border, but the people wouldn't let them. They tried offering better incentives, but it didn't work. Now the entire government was panicking. They didn't know what to do. But then an unexpected hero emerged. It was a low-level border guard named Gwenter, and he was about to become famous for stopping the biggest riot in human history. When Gwenter arrived at his post that morning, he was given a stern warning by his superiors. They told him that he was not to let anyone cross over the border, no matter what. They would deal with the situation later. But when he looked out at the crowd, he knew that he couldn't stop them. There were too many people, and they were getting more angry by the second. So Gwenter did something crazy. He grabbed his gun and shot up into the air. Everyone fell to the ground as they watched him open the gate and walk through. It was exactly the distraction they needed. Once the crowd saw that the gate was open, they rushed through and flooded into West Berlin. Within seconds, the border was breached and the wall was no more. You see, it all started with one man's foolishness. Günther Schabowski had no idea that he would be remembered as one of the most important figures in world history. His simple announcement that citizens of East Germany would be allowed to travel freely across the border led to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism in Eastern Europe. But sometimes one man's foolishness is another man's opportunity. And in this case, it was the opportunity for millions of people to finally be free. And speaking of opportunities, we have an amazing opportunity for you. Click that subscribe button and join our family. We have a ton of videos planned for the future, and we want you to be a part of it. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like. Until then, we'll see you next time.